The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indycar, Formula One, FormulaE, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here is your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Yeah, the gang is all here and there.
Here and there, that's a good one.
Yeah, we're kind of all here and there. Here, in other words, in studio, is producer John and myself. There, meaning Charlotte, is where Matt is. How's things in Charlotte? Hello, Matt.
We might have a little delay.
We have a delay?
A little bit, maybe.
You got us, Matt?
Stay right here.
There's a delay, too.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, can you hear us?
I'm going to say it's a negative.
It's beginning to seem like no. Try and press the button.
I did like twice.
Hey, there we go. All right, Matt, can you hear us now?
Oh?
I don't know.
I don't either.
See, fun with phones. Being as this is not our studio as a general rule. Try that. Okay. Is that on hold or is that on the air? Try and press it one more time. Oh, blinky. The fun of phones.
And live radio, too.
I know. Isn't it great? We're going to try and figure out the phone system here as soon as we can. I don't know. We'll get it all figured out. But, hey, we are live. Matt's in Charlotte. We're going to try and figure out how to get him on the air here in just a couple of moments. If you're watching us on our YouTube feed, CRN Live, you can see him. So that's the good news. So you know he's there. Now it's just a matter of us figuring out how to actually get him on the air. Any luck? No?
I'm working on it.
Okay. I think I hear him in the background, but maybe he can't hear me.
That's my supposition.
You can hear us
There we
now.
go.
Hey, what do you know? We finally figured out which button to push. John, fantastic job. How's things in Charlotte, North Carolina this morning?
Feels quite nice, actually, up here. It's not muggy, and it feels like you're in a sauna.
Yeah, it's kind of the same
But
way down
it's a
here.
little
We had that storm system that moved through, and all of a sudden the humidity kind of went away.
Yeah, it feels quite nice up here.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully that will mean good stuff for the racing this weekend. You going just for the Coca-Cola 600, or are you going to be there today, too?
I think we're going to go up tonight and go watch practice and qualifying, and then go to Speed Street after the events this afternoon.
Oh, okay. So you got a busy day planned either way.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
Well, hopefully you'll have a great time, and we'll hear more about it next week when we get ready to see you back here in studio and be ready to roll on that.
There is no such thing as a bad trip to a racetrack.
You know, I would agree with that, and we've talked about that before, too. So,
Right.
All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the subject here. Let's talk about the stuff that we're actually here for. And that's some racing. And let's recap last week real quick, which we usually do. Saturday in Indy got into the first round of qualifying for what's going to be tomorrow's Indy 500. They set the positions 13 through 33 last Saturday. Some of the names not making the fast 12. In other words, they're going to have to work their way through the field tomorrow. Two-time series champion Joseph Newgarden will start 14th. Connor Daly, 18th. Alexander Rossi, 20th. Colton Herta mired back in 25th. So that's going to be interesting to watch them as they try and plow through the field. And then we go down to Texas. Xfinity Series got things rolling. It was Moonlighter Tyler Reddick showing he could hang with the leaders all day long. But it was kind of interesting because most people were kind of discounting him, and the reason why is that he's driving for Big Machine Racing last weekend, and that means he's driving for a team that had never won a race until last week. With 31 laps to go, Reddick was running third, and he actually got by both second and first place in rapid-fire fashion, rolls on to the win, marks his 10th career Xfinity Series win, but as we noted, For Big Machine Racing and owner Scott Borchetta, this is their first victory in Xfinity Series racing. It takes a moonlighter to do it, Matt, but at the same point in time, Tyler Reddick is brought in to drive this car to, in some ways, say, hey, listen, this is what you're missing, isn't he?
Pretty much, yeah. But, with all-star team that Patrick Donahue running the show, Patrick Donahue's a longtime veteran of NASCAR, and essentially the Big Machine Racing 48 car being a third RCR car,
right?
Because they get all their equipment and technical lines from RCR. It kind of honestly did not surprise me at all.
Okay.
It was just a matter of who was in the seat and what could get done. I mean, you saw a few flashes with them with Kaz Crawler.
Right.
But when Tyler Reddick got in the car, you saw the car really wake up.
Yeah. Something about Reddick, maybe just the experience that Reddick has over Kaz Growler. I mean, we know that Kaz has some Cup Series experience, but Reddick seems to be a little bit more so.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There's no doubt.
Reddick besting fellow Cup Moonlighter William Byron. He had to settle for second. Sam Mayer third. Justin Allgaier fourth. So really another good, if not winning, week for Junior Motorsports. Austin Hill, Ryan Truex, Josh Berry in there for Junior Motorsports. Riley Erbst, AJ Allmendinger, and Landon Castle fill out the top 10. I want to spend a moment talking about Riley Erbst because you and I have kind of looked at Riley, and we were wondering what his situation was going to be when he joined Stewart-Haas Racing. We were thinking this might be a really, really good chance. And he did kind of wake up the second half of last year. And this year he's been consistently up in and around the top 15, if not top 10. But there are drivers that we look at and we go, it's not a matter of if, but when they're going to claim a win. When it comes to Riley, I don't go the when. I'm still going the if he claims a win because I'm just not seeing that aspect of him in that car.
I agree because he's way too inconsistent, if you ask me.
Okay.
And then this weekend, Ryan Preece being in the BJ McLeod car.
Yeah.
That's a Stewart-Haas prepared Xfinity Series car,
right?
And it showed itself yesterday with how qualifying shaped up. Maybe foreshadowing a little bit there, but you're really going to see who can do what this week with him because he's really never had a teammate with a car coming really from the same camp to gauge himself.
Mm-hmm.
This weekend, you're really going to see that.
Okay. AJ Allmendinger, Landon Castle filled out the top 10. Ty Gibbs continues to lead the point standings in Xfinity. He's got 3 wins. Noah Gragson's got 2. Single-time winners who are locked into the playoffs as well include AJ Allmendinger, Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, Brandon Jones, and Austin Hill. Those who are in on points, remember 12 drivers will make the Xfinity Series playoffs. Sam Mayer, Riley Erbst is in there. That shows how kind of consistently he's been up in the top 15, if not top 10. He just can't seem to get consistent top 5s and be in contention for wins. So, yeah, right now in points, he's in the playoffs, but he's still one of those guys that we're just kind of looking at. Landon Castle, Ryan Sieg, Daniel Hemrick there. A couple of names on the outside looking in. Big names that we might not have expected to be there. May have expected more to be inside there. Jeb Burton, Sheldon Creed, who's champion from the Camping World Truck Series, who stepped up to Xfinity competition as well. Brings us to Sunday morning where F1 got things rolling in Spain. Charles Leclerc starts on the pole. He actually gets a really great start, and he built a pretty comfortable lead. And he was looking like he was going to cruise onto a win, but on lap 27, his engine began to lose power, so he had to retire the car. It's one of the first times we've heard any of the 6 Ferrari cars have that problem this year. On turn 4 of lap 1, both Red Bull drivers said that with the help of wind gusts, they were actually kind of blown off track. They didn't wreck, credit to them, but Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez then righted themselves, so they had to begin pursuit. It's a pursuit that, due to Leclerc's engine failure, initially gave Sergio Perez the lead. They used some pit strategy. Both drivers on soft tires were able to get around Mercedes driver George Russell. That's where they were in the lead, and first and second specifically. And then Red Bull, to the consternation of a whole lot of fans, save for the ones who are big Max Verstappen fans, Red Bull began playing politics. And we've heard about this in Formula One pretty much ever since we started covering it on this show, Matt. They order Sergio Perez to move aside and let teammate and the defending series champion Max Verstappen pass him. Perez initially protested, but eventually he played the willing teammate, sort of. moving aside. He gives up a win. Verstappen benefits from the team play. He gets the win. Leclerc's bad fortune makes for an interesting day. Perez not overly happy afterward. He ends up with second. George Russell outperforming his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton third. Carlos Sainz, there's Lewis Hamilton in fifth. Hamilton, after the race, admitted contact between himself and Haas F1 driver Kevin Magnussen kept him from a better result. Magnussen had dropped from 8th at the start to finish 17th on the day. Bad day for him. Valtteri Bottas 6th, Esteban Ocon 7th, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda fill out the top 10. With the win and Leclerc's retirement, we now have a change in the points. Max Verstappen leads now 110 to 104, 85 for Sergio Perez. And that's where, again, getting a win in Formula One is tough enough. And when you're in the position and really have, obviously, a strong enough car to be able to do it, I understand where Sergio Perez is coming from. I want to say I understand where Red Bull's coming from because now, as we just mentioned, we know that the win gave him enough points to launch Max Verstappen over Charles Leclerc and into the points lead. But at the same point in time, when does this stop? When do we start looking at, hey, you go out, you get what you can. If you can pass Sergio Perez on your own, Max, knock yourself out. But we're not going to tell Sergio to move aside because guess what? He deserves a win just as much as you do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it still would have been a team win for Red Bull regardless.
Yeah, I mean, they would have still finished first and second.
I think Christian Horner, he played his numbers wrong because with Leclerc being out and even with Verstappen still finishing second, he still would have, at worst, I think, tied Leclerc, maybe up by 1 or 2, but he's up by 6. I can see that part, but then again, on the devil's advocate side of it, you still, I don't know if there's any right way or wrong way to even say it, because you would have had the team win regardless. Sergio Perez, I mean, he cut the ground down a lot, but he would have cut it down a few points more to Leclerc.
Yeah.
But then again, there's so many scenarios you could talk about of which way it could have went. It still would have benefited Red Bull regardless.
Right.
In my eyes.
I don't know. We've constantly on this show, we've questioned the whole team orders thing, and I got to admit, I kind of hate it.
I can't stand team orders in motorsports, period.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, as we mentioned, Max Verstappen's your new points leader. Charles Leclerc second, 85 for Sergio Perez, trailing by 19 points out of second place. George Russell is fourth. He's got 74. Carlos Sainz with 65. 46 for Lewis Hamilton. Dude's just languishing back there. Lando Norris, 39, 38 for Valtteri Bottas. Esteban Ocon holds 30. Kevin Magnussen hanging on by his fingernails inside the top 10 with 15. Something's going to have to be righted over there at Haas F1. Or, well, I guess if you just avoid collisions off the start, that might be a big help, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Red Bull got your Constructors' Cup lead, 195 points to Ferrari's 169. Mercedes third, 120. Then you drop all the way down to 50 for McLaren. Alfa Romeo 39, 34 for Alpine. AlphaTauri holding 17. Haas F1 15. All of them scored by Kevin Magnussen. Aston Martin was 6. Williams has 3 so far in the year. Then we go back to Indianapolis for Sunday and the second day of qualifying. They first ran the Fast 12, the fastest dozen from day one. They were going to see who would make up positions 7 through 12 in this round. From 12th to 7th, they are Jimmy Johnson, Will Power, Takuma Sato, Romain Grosjean, Felix Rosenqvist, Pato Award. The big surprise out of there, Takuma Sato was so fast during practices leading up to qualifying to see him starting 10th. Yes, still impressive, but not where I think I would have figured he would have been. I would have figured he would have been first row.
I was, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, I was anticipating that Rick Ware car to being on the first 2 rows at worst.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Looking out of those bottom 6 outside the Fast 6, the biggest surprise to me was Jimmy Johnson because so much speed that he showed those last couple of practice sessions, and then he had that nearly catastrophic bobble coming into turn 1
right
on lap 1, which killed his entire run. If he hadn't had that bobble and the car would have stuck like Scott Dixon's did, you could have with ease seen Ganassi have 5 of the first 6 spots.
Yeah. By the way, foreshadowing.
Easy.
Because after those
foreshadowing.
positions were set, then you go out and you get the fastest 6 out of that, and they go again. Now we've got the front 2 rows. They are from 6 to the pole sitter. Tony Kanaan, Marcus Ericsson, Ed Carpenter, Renus VK, Alex Palou, and garnering the pole, 6-time series champion Scott Dixon, who claims his 5th Indianapolis 500 pole position. So congratulations to Scott. As you mentioned, he was just able to make that car stick, and it worked. So congratulations to him.
Yep.
Finally, we get to the fun, the big money, the pursuit of cash, if you will, as NASCAR got their all-star event going with the Open to begin with. No real controversy there. A little bit, but not certainly as bad as what would happen later on in the night. For drivers to work their way into the big event, you get the first 4 drivers transferring into the all-star race. They are, by winning stages, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chris Buescher, Daniel Suarez. Really not much of a surprise on any of the 3 of them, is there?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
And Eric Jones wins the fan vote. We say he won the fan vote. We don't actually know if he won it because it could have been Suarez, Buescher, or Stenhouse who actually won it. But because they won stages, they got in, and Eric Jones ends up getting in because he's the next highest. But either way, Eric Jones is in. So
I'm pretty sure it was Suarez that won it, but Suarez raced his way against Jones
Sure.
in second.
I agree with that. So there you go. That's the quartet. They transfer to the main event. Now we're set for the all-star race itself. Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch on the front row. Start off with Busch actually taking an early lead. One of the pre-race favorites, Kyle Larson, though, he crashes out just into the second stage. A little bit later, with only a handful of laps left in the stage, Chase Elliott spins, and then Kyle Busch ends up getting a flat tire. He slows down. Ross Chastain is either apparently unaware or thinks that Kyle Busch is going to go into a direction that he didn't anticipate. Either way, Ross Chastain ends up not just hitting the back end of Kyle Busch's car, he goes and drives over the backside of Kyle Busch's car. All 3 of their nights are ended, talking about Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, so 4, really. Those are pretty big names to be out, and for Ross Chastain, that wreck could have been a lot worse if something had gone wrong that didn't.
You know, I joked around with somebody that sent me a message about that wreck. I told him, I said, if he had hit him any harder, he would have flew outside of Turn 2 and landed in the Buc-ee's parking lot that sits behind Turn 2 at Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah.
Because he caught some serious air.
He did, too. I mean, and the fact that he didn't flip over is actually kind of also impressive now that I stop and think about it.
Yeah, I agree. That was pretty interesting that he did not flip over.
A relatively uneventful third stage, save for this, and I do mention this for a specific purpose because we're going to get back to it here in a little bit. Christopher Bell tags the wall during the third stage, but he keeps going. And NASCAR didn't do anything. Just saying. Okay? Stage 4 saw your fan vote winner, Eric Jones, hit the wall, caused enough damage, that ends his night. And then you get into the fun. With only a couple of laps left in the race, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. loses a tire. In this case, this tire begins to shred, and it leaves little bits of that tire all along the apron. And you say, well, it's all along the apron, right? No caution. Okay. I have to admit, and you and I have talked about this, being out of the racing surface, if you got debris down on the apron, who cares, right?
Right.
Okay. NASCAR doesn't call a caution. I actually applauded NASCAR for that. Now keep that in mind when I tell you this. Christopher Bell loses the back end of his car after this and ends up backing into the wall. There's no debris. I'm not even sure paint chips came off of the wall, truth be told. I mean, there is literally no debris from the number 20 car. NASCAR calls a caution. Why?
Great question.
Okay, so you don't have an answer either.
I don't know why they would throw the caution with that one either.
Okay.
Because, you know, Bell, he doesn't lose. He just gets loose, slides up into the wall. Here goes hair trigger caution light again.
Mm-hmm.
Then going from there. So I mean,
By the way,
I don't know.
And for the second
sense
time
of
in our
the-
race recap situation, this is what we call foreshadowing.
From a sense of it, and you know, with a little bit of foreshadowing here, with some of these things we're about to talk about, I really, really, really question what in the Sam Hill was race control doing in that tower the entire night.
We're going to try and unravel this as much as we can, okay? Here we go. Again, caution flies, there's no debris. This is the All-Star race. NASCAR has said this race, being an exhibition, it's a cash grab, must end under green. So we go into overtime. On the final lap, and remember, must end under green. Keep those 4 words in mind when we tell you this. Ryan Blaney has built up a huge lead. I mean, we're talking about almost 2 seconds. He's literally only yards. He's less than a football field away from crossing the finish line at first. We've all seen Texas. We know Texas. He had to be doing every bit of what, 180 to 185 as he's coming down there?
At least when the caution fell, the section of lights that he was at coming to the start finish line, I would say is less than 100 feet.
Okay.
Less than 100 feet away from the actual line.
And if he's doing 180 to 185, 100 feet goes by in the blink of an eye, right?
I would say less than a tenth of a second.
There you go. But again, must end under green. Again, 100 in your case, we'll use 100 feet away from crossing the finish line. Even as Ryan Blaney is looking at the flagman who's waving the checkered flag, NASCAR Race Control calls for a caution because Ricky Stenhouse Jr., all the way at the back of the field, remember, had to get a flat tire changed. He's coming off turn 2. He's slow, obviously. He ends up scraping the wall. Doesn't wreck, mind you. We've talked how many times over the course of years about a Darlington stripe? Effectively, what Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got was the equivalent of a Texas stripe. He keeps rolling. He didn't spin. He didn't hit anybody. He might have put a paint chip on the racing surface, maybe. But I don't think he did either. He kept
At worst.
rolling. Does not wreck. But NASCAR calls the caution anyway. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still clueless.
Now, Blaney has been paying attention to the flagman. Saw checkers, no yellow. He crosses the start-finish line. He believes he's won. He starts to celebrate. What does the winning driver do when they start to celebrate? They start taking down the window net to make it easier to get out of the car, right? Right.
Yep.
Then he's told the race isn't over. Now, you and I started texting back and forth on this situation. On Fox, I wasn't listening to MRN, with all due respect to our home station here. Announcer Mike Joy and analysts Clint Boyer and Larry Reynolds all seem stunned by the caution flag. Ryan Blaney's flabbergasted, and now he realizes he's got to try and put his window net back up to get into a restart. He does get it settled. It's not completely back in place. We'll get into the details when we get into the news. But NASCAR apparently ruled that it was good enough. They restarted the race. Blaney, lucky for NASCAR, because holy cow, the backlash would have been horrible, ends up winning. Denny Hamlin was second. Yeah, we'll get back to that later, too. Austin Cindric third, Joey Logano fourth, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, A.J. Allmendinger, Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, Christopher Bell. There's your top 10. Can't wait to get into the news here because I get the feeling we'll spend a little bit of time on this. Racing this weekend actually began last night. Did you have a chance to check some of this out, Matt?
I did actually get the truck race in.
Camping World Truck Series running the North Carolina Education Lottery 200 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. You got the recap and a points rundown. What you got for us?
Yeah, all right. The recap of the race, it was quite interesting at the end with, race leader Carson Hocevar on a restart. Again, another one of them questionable cautions because two trucks got together, they got into the wall, kept rolling, no debris on the racetrack, but yet we throw a caution and call it overtime.
You would have thought they would have learned something.
You would have thought they would, exactly. But race leader Carson Hocevar that had led 57 of the 134 laps up into at the time. Just hard racing with Ryan Preece. The truck just gets loose on the bottom, loses the air, and then they both slide up into the wall. Hocevar takes himself out. Just hard racing.
Yeah.
And it caused a chain effect, and it ended up letting Ross Chastain go onto the win with Grant Enfinger coming in second, John Hunter Nemechek third, Christian Eckes fourth, and Zane Smith in the top 5, completing the top 10. You had Tanner Gray in 6th, Kyle Busch in 7th. He was not a factor the entire race. That's the first time I've ever had to say that.
Wow.
Chandler Smith was 8th, Stuart Friesen 9th, and Ben Rhodes rounded out your top 10. Carson Hocevar ended up 16th. He finished the race, damage on the lead lap, but he was still able to finish. And then you had closing out. Let me get to the points here real quick. Drivers' point standings, the official standings from NASCAR, the top 12 for the top 12 advance on. You got John Hunter Nemechek, your overall leader, Ben Rhodes 2nd, Zane Smith 3rd, Chandler Smith 4th, Stuart Friesen 5th, Tom Majeski 6th, Christian Eckes 7th, Carson Hocevar 8th, Grant Enfinger 9th, Matt Crafton 10th, Tanner Gray's 11th, and Derek Krause rounds out the top 12. Matt DiBenedetto is just first man out and 13th, only by 8 points.
Okay. Well, tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll give you the rest of the weekend, and then we'll get into this whole NASCAR thing, which ought to be an interesting conversation between Matt and I. We'll deal with that when we come back. You're listening to CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
Nostalgia and girl power take the stage at Alabama Shakespeare Festival with the marvelous Wonderettes. If you love girl group pop music from the 50s and 60s and the power of good girlfriends, you'll love the musical the New York Times calls an utter charm bomb. Get tickets and more info at asf.net.
Now's the best time to get into a brand new vehicle. Test drive the power of a new Ford F-150, the reliability of a new Honda Accord, or the economical value of a brand new Nissan Versa. Test drive and find your perfect fit at Sarah Automotive of Sylacauga.
Custom Pizza of Ohatchee is the region's best pizzas, calzones, sandwiches, salads, and more. And now they have a special each day of the week. Mondays are Philly pizzas. Tuesday is the small muffaletta combo. Wednesday is pasta. Thursday is chicken cordon bleu. Friday are medium supreme pizzas. And Saturday is wings. Like us on Facebook to see each day's specials and to give us a call. And remember, we will deliver up to 10 miles at Custom Pizza of Ohatchee, 256-892-2600.
Callie's Love Stuff.
Sexy and fun, there's something for everyone at Callie's Love Stuff. You're gonna love this place, it puts a smile on your face. Callie's Love Stuff.
The CMP Talladega Marksmanship Park is the home of marksmanship, where responsible firearm ownership, safety instruction, and accuracy training reside inside a beautiful 500-acre range facility. Open to the public, no membership required. The CMP Talladega Marksmanship Park has something for all types of firearms and firearm owners. Located at 4387 Turner Mill Road in Talladega. Call 256-474-4408. That's CMP Talladega at thecmp.org.
This is Jeff Barrett, General Manager here at Greenway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, where you can get up to 25% off on Ram 1500 trucks or enjoy 0% financing. Order the car the way you want the car built, not the way somebody tells you they've got it, by ordering factory direct here at Greenway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Come see the all-new Jeep Wagoneer during Jeep Freedom Days, where I won't be undersold. Enjoy 0% financing on Chargers and Challengers at Greenway CDJR in Anniston, or online at www.greenwaycdjrofaniston.com.
Sylacauga and surrounding areas, are you ready to level up? Then it's time to join the VIP Club at Toyota of Sylacauga. That's right, it's time for you to be a VIP. When you join the Toyota of Sylacauga VIP Club, you will receive 7 years of oil changes, complimentary tire rotations, 3-day exchange policy, $500 off your next purchase, 10% off parts and service, and much, much more. What's that? You want to know how much it costs to join our VIP Club? Absolutely zero. That's right, you get all of these amazing benefits at no cost to you. That's $3,495 in benefits. And don't forget about Toyota of Sylacauga's team of credit specialists here to get you approved, because 100% credit approval is our #1 goal. So if you are ready to level up, come join the VIP Club at Toyota of Sylacauga for $3,495 in benefits at no cost to you. Remember, you're not just a number. You are part of the family at Toyota Toyota of Sylacauga, 39765 Highway 280, toyotaofsylacauga.com. We're worth the drive, and we will prove it. With approved credit, see dealer for details.
4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. I'm Steve West with producer John Myers here in our flagship studios here in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous where Matt is.
Yeah, Matt's in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's going to be up there checking in the Coca-Cola. It's easier for me to say. Coca-Cola 600 tomorrow night. And that brings us to this weekend's racing slate. We talked about last night. Camping World Truck Series got things rolling. Today in Charlotte, it's the Xfinity Series. They take to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Going to run the Alsco Uniforms 300, airing on Fox Sports 1 PRN Radio. You'll hear it beginning 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central Time. Tomorrow morning, one of the coolest days of the entire year, especially if you're a motorsports fan, maybe the best day of the entire year for motorsports people. Busy day starts off with Formula One running the famed Monaco Grand Prix. 19 turns, 2.07 miles long on the Monaco circuit. The race will be on ESPN, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. They've been running some practice this morning, and you say you got some results there?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. They've been running the FP3, completed just a little bit ago, and with qualifying starts in about 30 minutes. Sergio Perez led the way in FP3, pretty slim margin over Charles Leclerc. You had Carlos Sainz was third, Max Verstappen was P4, Pierre Gasly 5th, Lando Norris 6th, Lewis Hamilton nearly 1 second off of the pace in 7th.
Wow.
Right at 9/10. You had Kevin Magnussen 8th, George Russell was 9th, and Fernando Alonso rounded out the top 10.
See, there we go again. We're looking at a Haas F1 team, Kevin Magnussen specifically, sitting inside the top 10. It shows promise, but unfortunately that team, ever since after the first 3 races of the year, they haven't followed through on that promise.
Yeah, but I think just last week was one just racing, if you ask me, with him and Lewis Hamilton getting together.
Yeah, maybe true too.
You had Valtteri Bottas 14th, Alexander Albon 15th, Daniel Ricciardo 16th, Esteban Ocon 17th, Lance Stroll was 18th, Zhou Guanyu was 19th, and Nicholas Latifi bringing up the rear again.
As usual. So for Monaco, then we go to Indianapolis. So from Crown Jewel in F1 to the Crown Jewel of the IndyCar Series, it'll be the Indy 500 for the 106th time. NBC and the IndyCar Radio Network got the coverage starting 11 a.m. Eastern. Yeah, it's an early start. 10 a.m. Central Time. A lot of pomp and circumstance going to lead things off, so be prepared for the pageantry. And it is cool, don't get me wrong. So it's not like the racing is going to begin at that time. You still got to get into the meat and potatoes of it, and that'll come. And then after all that, that'll be where Matt's going to be. Cup Series, getting into the longest race of their season, Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Fox, PRN Radio, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central Time. NHRA has in the past traditionally run on this weekend, but they're taking this weekend off, as is FormulaE. All right. You ready for this? We may spend the rest of the hour on this. I don't know. It's potential.
Good thing I took something for a headache this morning.
There you go. All right. As we noted on the final lap of the All-Star race, Ryan Blaney less than a football field away from crossing the finish line. I'll just say it that way. You said 100 feet.
Yeah.
I'll give it 100 yards just to kind of be safe. Either way.
Yeah, give that cushion.
That amount of distance is going to fly by at 180 to 185 miles an hour. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt.
As noted, flagman's waving the checkered flag. Went over coming off of turn 2. Remember, pretty much half the track away. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. scrapes the wall but keeps rolling. No damage done really to the car or to the wall for all intents and purposes. But NASCAR calls for a caution flag anyway. And as we noted, this is an exhibition race, the All-Star race. And NASCAR rules state that in an exhibition race, the race must end under green. And they went back and they checked the video and they realized that the caution flag lights came on before Blaney crossed the finish line. So Blaney didn't win then and there, and the race goes into overtime. Now again, Blaney thought he had won because the last thing that he saw was the checkered flag, and now he's beginning to celebrate. And he's begun that celebration by taking his window net down, which every driver does. But once the team finally understood what the situation was, they get on the radio to their driver, and an incredulous Ryan Blaney now has to figure out a way to try and get that window net back up. In post-race interviews, because, we gave away the ending, he was able to win the race after the fact. He said in post-race interviews about the rule that the race had to finish under green, quote, "That rule was never kind of relayed to us. I already took my window net down and everything. My left arm is worn out from trying to get that blank thing back up. I got it rigged up enough to where it halfway stayed." And you're familiar with this. I mean, you're the resident driver here. Window nets have evolved over the course of time here. I mean, when the NASCAR mandated a window net, it was because Richard Petty had done a multiple rollover crash, and when it was all said and done, he was hanging halfway out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
So they mandate window nets, but over the course of time, as we have evolved the cars and the teams have started to understand things like, hey, you know what? The window net actually could be an aerodynamic aid. They have become much tighter when it comes to literally how everything is put together. It's not a loose thing. You can't really just, pull on it and, have a whole lot of play on it. If you put your hand on it, that thing feels like it's pretty solid, despite the fact that it is technically exactly what they call it. It is a net.
Right.
For the next-gen cars, teams have made them so tight for aerodynamic purposes, the driver, once he's inside the car or she's inside the car, can't really reattach them. And in fact, some people have even said it takes almost the equivalent of a weightlifter from the outside of the car to get that thing latched into place after the driver gets in and before the race begins. I mean, they're really having to, when it's behind the driver towards the back of the window, you got to slide a rod into a small little hole, obviously. And then you have to latch it on the front side. And those crew members that are putting it in there, they are actually having to put some effort behind that. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, because it's designed to have so much tension on it. When you do lock it down, as you were stating earlier, it turns into a de facto. Think of it as like an added layer of a plexiglass to the outside of where the driver's side window is.
Mm-hmm.
It acts like that, even though it is a net. Now you have to put so much force and tension on it just to where it sits there and it locks itself into place, because if you have that little bit of tension, the tension that's not on there, and there's a little bit of play in it, you're basically going to be causing drag on the car, because it's going to act like a parachute. When you hear the term when a quarter panel gets flared out, it's acting like a parachute.
Right.
The net would act like a parachute as well. And that's why there's so much force and tension on it. And even though you got to take it's a loop strap. When you do get the window net hooked and latched in, you take that loop strap and add a second layer. I call it a second layer of a hook, if you want to look at it that way.
Right.
To where it's a double latch, if you ask me.
Well, Blaney ends up getting a couple of laps with the caution, with the safety car and everything, to try and work on it. Remember, he's got to try and put up a window net, but he's also got to stay at speed, at pace car speed. He cannot obviously lose that position. He didn't. He's able to get the front of the window net put up, and he wraps that pull strap that you were talking around it to keep it held up. But it was obvious to you, and it was obvious to me, that the back end of that net was not in place. And you and I had started to question this, whether NASCAR was going to call Blaney down pit road. They didn't. They didn't black flag him either. Instead, they let the race resume. Blaney rightfully did win. Didn't sit all that well with second-place finisher Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin said, after all was said and done in post-race interviews, that Blaney should have been called down pit road to put the net back on properly. And you and I both had conversations about this, in the fact that this was, in our minds, NASCAR's blunder And if they were to have called Ryan Blaney down pit road to fix said window net, that they should have allowed him to go back and take first place back over.
Exactly.
Denny Hamlin doesn't see it that way. Of course, Denny Hamlin, as we noted in the rundown, he's the second place guy. So therefore, he's the one that gets to complain about the fact that he missed out on $1 million paycheck. So in some ways, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. But in other ways, he needs to understand that the circumstances here are extraordinarily, well, screwed up.
That's an understatement. That's a complete, total understatement, because, you know, as he said multiple times on social media, he said it when he done his interview with Dale Jr. Download this week with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Mike Davis. You know, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
There were more than 2 wrongs in this entire situation.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
As a matter of fact, let's get into that, and then we'll take a break here. Blaney acknowledged NASCAR for the fact that they let him go. Blaney said after the fact, quote, "I appreciate NASCAR for not making us come down pit road to fix it and letting me get clipped back into where at least we could stay out there." Hamlin, as you noted, not willing to let it go. He posted on social media later on in the night, quote, "Never should have been a yellow in the first place, so at least we agree on that, Denny." And then he added this: "They put Blaney in the situation he was in. To make up for it, they let him break a rule." Yes and no. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Blaney W, NASCAR L. On that, I also agree. Yeah, Blaney's the winner and should have been, rightfully, because they never should have thrown the caution flag in the first place. So we'll go back to the first sentence of that particular post. Everything else matters not until we get to Blaney W, NASCAR L. Really, that's what his social media post should have read. Never should have been a yellow in the first place. Blaney W, NASCAR L. Forget they put the Blaney in the situation he was in to make up for it. They let him break a rule. 2 wrongs don't make a right. All of that to me is nothing. It's jibber jabber. It means nothing. And quite frankly, he never should have said it. The post should have been edited to read, "Never should have been a yellow in the first place. Blaney W, NASCAR L. Period. End of sentence.
I can see your point on that right there, but he is right on the situation. They put him in the situation. They did put Ryan Blaney in that situation for him, and for the situation it was in, no doubt. Because, you know, and after the break, I'll just go into it more. I'll go into it more.
Okay, we do still have more on this because NASCAR finally started to talk about this once we got into the week and had a chance to look back on it and realize, yeah, it might not have been our best move. We'll talk about it when we come back. Yeah, we're still talking about this. You're listening to CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
You already know Sylacauga Marine and ATV is the area's number.
with 2 tires only. And back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Steve West, producer John Myers here in our flagship studios in Alabama. Matt Nicholson in Charlotte preparing for Coca-Cola 600 race tomorrow. So he's live on the phone, and if you're watching us on our CRN Live YouTube feed, which you can, and you can do it for free, by the way, just go onto YouTube, search CRN Live. You can even hit the subscribe button. It's free. We don't charge you for that. And you can check out Matt there. And we're talking about this debacle that was the end of the All-Star race from last weekend. Now, we talked about Denny Hamlin. He talked about it during post-race interviews. He even talked about it on social media after the fact. Very, very frustrated. Blaney even said he understood Hamlin's frustration. But he said that NASCAR cleared him. He had both hands on the wheel. It wasn't like he had one hand on the wheel and the other hand was holding up the window net. When the green was shown, he was driving with both hands on the wheel. And we watched, both you and I did, the window net. Yeah, it might not have been the safest situation in the world, but it didn't come flying out of the car. It stayed in the place where Ryan Blaney put it. Good enough?
Right. Considering how the way this race ended, and like you said, it was a total blunder, which I think that's putting it nicely, if you ask me. I mean, yeah, it's up. I mean, all they got to do is make 2 wide open green laps, and we knew if he got out front, game over.
Right.
And he did. So it was essentially game over, and it was really nothing in danger.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was up. I mean, I get Denny Hamlin's side. I get Ryan Blaney's side. I see it from both sides of it because I've been in a frustrating standpoint as well as a winning standpoint.
Well, and
so
again, I mean,
see it both ways.
You and I both know this. Money makes the world go round when it comes to racing, and $1 million check is, yeah, you miss out on $1 million check, especially being in second place and having the somewhat questionable circumstances for first place. Certainly I can see Denny Hamlin's frustration. But in the end, they did Ryan Blaney wrong, and I think that they corrected the mistake, and it kind of looked that way when NASCAR Senior VP for Competition Scott Miller got in front of media later on in the week. He said this, quote, "Obviously, I think everybody knows that we probably prematurely called that yellow flag." You think? You did prematurely call for a yellow flag. No doubt about that. Miller continues, quote, "The way that works, we all watched. We saw the car, mentioned the car against the wall, riding the wall down the back straightaway." I didn't necessarily see it that way, but okay. "The race director looked up. I'm not sure what he saw, but he immediately put it out. I wish we wouldn't have done that." Miller added that there, and I'll tell you what, we'll get to what he added to later on. You and I have been up in towers, obviously. We haven't been in the Charlotte Tower, but you and I have been up in towers at tracks that range from 3/4 of a mile long to 2.66 miles. The points of view are a little bit different, obviously, and the race director may have seen it the way that Scott Miller talked about it, that he was kind of riding the wall down the back stretch, but it really kind of looked like, how many times in Days of Thunder did we see Cole Trickle just kind of bounce off the wall and get back onto the track and keep rolling? That's what it looked like to me. But is that because we had the benefit of the live, or I should say live, it was in replay form, but is that because we had the benefit of a Fox camera pointed directly back down the back straightaway and allowing us to see that it was more of a bounce instead of a ride?
I think so, but with what he was saying right there, you know, when he quoted, said, obviously, I think everybody knows that we probably call that flag premature.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to stop him on that statement right there.
Okay.
You and I both know how many people at any one given point can be in the NASCAR race control side of the tower.
Oh, yeah.
I would dare say up to 20.
Sure.
Sitting on 2 different levels.
And I would say, given the stakes of this, again, not a points race, but $1 million up for grabs, you probably have, I'm just going to give it a low end of what I think it's going to be. There's got to be at least a dozen officials up there.
Yeah, I could go with that the low ball number right there that you just gave, the 12. Okay. Now, I've in the past had more opportunities to be able to see how they structure themselves versus yourself, because you're having to constantly look at what needs to be done. You're scanning the track. You're reading screens, whatever it may be at any given point.
Right.
Glancing over at times, you can visibly see. Now this is one of the past ones. You've got Tim Berman that plays race director,
right?
And then this year's race director, Jusan Hamilton, in which and our past liaison Stacy Fine, she's told us about Jusan in the past. Here, there, hearsay, whatever you want to take out of it. In the grand scheme of these things here, instead of Scott Miller getting thrown to the wolves in the media, you put Jusan Hamilton in front of him and ask him what caused you to throw that caution.
There you go.
When the race leader was less than 100 yards by the cushion it would give here, less than 100 yards from the start-finish line, what did you see to warrant throwing that caution? Don't make Scott Miller say, well, I don't know. Have the question, I don't know what he saw. I wish we wouldn't have done that.
Right.
You're not getting a clear-cut answer. No way, no how, no other way to say it. Put him in front of the jury. Make him explain to the jury what he saw to warrant throwing that caution less than 100 yards from the start-finish line. Because at the rate of speed Ryan Blaney was at, by the time when he saw checkered flag in the air and they retracted the checkered flag, put the caution out, Ryan Blaney was already under the start-finish line and he had no way of seeing it.
No way at all.
There's no way at all. So, and then I can understand more people being in the tower at a place like Talladega, Daytona, Indianapolis, Michigan, your higher length tracks.
Sure.
To be able to have more visual. But in Texas, there's no excuse when you've got 3 to 4 people. I'm going to say 3 to 4 people, which, let's use your number 12 here. You've got 12 people overall. You've got a certain amount of people watching the frame-by-frame cameras that are placed, thousands of them around the racetrack to give a visual. You've got, I'm going to say, at least 4 people in communication with the outside spotters that spot for the debris that they may not be able to see in their line of sight from the tower or from a camera angle. You've got a spotter that's maybe on an inside tower perch or an outside tower perch looking. It's like, hey, tower, turn to the tower. We got a tire carcass laying at the very bottom edge of turn 2 groove, in danger of being hit. Put it out. Let's get the debris up. Okay.
Right.
I've seen that scenario before. I've heard it on the radio back in the turn 3 tower before I was fortunate enough to come into the main PA tower and the main race control tower. All right. Let's say then you got 4 people, your race director, let's say it's your race director, Scott Miller, Steve O'Donnell, and let's say Tim Berman's up there too. Jusan Hamilton, Scott Miller, Steve O'Donnell, Tim Berman. All right. Berman, O'Donnell, and Miller, they're looking like, okay, clear. Jusan looks up, race director, put it out. Why did you throw a hair trigger caution light? When the race is getting ready to be ended, now we've got unnecessary drama.
Exactly.
Simply put. So put him in front of the jury, make him explain what's going on, and give him the answer of what he saw that warranted being that caution being thrown. Because even Ty Boyd, Ricky Stenhouse's spotter, said he stayed high to let the cars go by and not impede the finish of the race and cause a caution. Then he got all the way to the bottom of the racetrack, out of the racing groove, and then caution's thrown. For what?
Yeah.
And there's still not been a clear-cut black and white answer given what caused the caution to be thrown and what warranted it to be thrown.
Right. And we may not get the answer to that. Miller also added later on in his interview with the media that there was no way to know whether Blaney did have the window net 100% attached and could not be certain that he did have it completed or not. So he made a second judgment call in short order, this one allowing Blaney to run for the win. Again, I think he got it right, but no disrespect. Everybody who was watching on television could have easily seen, and if they had looked up at the video cameras, that we know they have the ability to look at all of the shots that you see on television. But the thing about it is they got a monitor that has it all in sections to where they could actually look at any one of those camera angles at the drop of a hat. All they got to do is choose, hey, we like camera angle number 10. Let's look at number 10. So they hit number 10. They could look at any of them at any point in time, all of them live. We obviously don't have that particular opportunity. It's whatever Fox or NBC or Fox Sports 1 or whoever it is happens to put up on the screen at any one given time. But they have access to any one of them, and they can pull up any one of them and make it a big picture at any point in time. It was obvious to pretty much anybody who watched, who knows any little inkling about racing, that window net was not in its proper position.
There was a solid. The rear of the window net, it was up at an angle to where the eyelet hook is, where you attach the backside into it. But where it was coming down, there was a solid, at minimum, 4-inch gap between the top halo roll bar and where that window net was hanging.
So again, if you want to go by safety purposes, this wouldn't have made Denny Hamlin any happier, truth be told. But if NASCAR really had wanted to do the safety thing and still done this right, they should have called Ryan Blaney down, explained to the team, we're going to call your driver down, you put his window net up, we're going to put you back in the position that you were before we called you down.
Yeah.
Now, again, This isn't going to make Denny Hamlin. It's not going to make Denny Hamlin any happier, but it's the right move for both safety purposes and in the big picture. It probably would have been the better move. This is the problem with making snap decisions, and quite frankly, if we look back at what happened this week, and we're not going to get into everything that happened in Texas. Obviously, our thoughts and our prayers are out with all the families and all the people who lost friends or loved ones, family members in Uvalde, Texas. But when you're in the situation where you're making snap decisions, when you have the time like we do and the luxury of time to look back on it and play armchair quarterback, our hindsight's 2020. It isn't necessarily the same thing when you're doing heat of the moment. But we still got to the whole thing could have been avoided if NASCAR would stop with the hair trigger cautions.
Case in point, it's what you touched on with emotions running high, which we've seen how some people are pushing narratives, pushing through their emotions, and it's basically this certain side is pulling an acting job, if you ask me.
Yeah. Okay.
It simply put, it ends itself with stop throwing hair trigger cautions, like you just said.
Right.
Find a legitimate reason of why the caution's being thrown, and give them a reason. Give a reason. Why am I slowing this race down? Why am I stopping this race? Whether it be a car, you can clearly understand when a caution when you got a car wadded up on fire.
Sure.
After you hit the wall or a part failure, so whatnot. But if you got cars still rolling, your spotters, there's no debris whatsoever around the racetrack, why are you throwing the caution?
Yep. Especially with, 100 yards to go or less. We got to take a break here. We got to transition from hour 1 to hour 2, and we'll get into some nicer notes here. Trackhouse Racing set to put out a third car. Trackhouse Racing, think about this, just started last year as a single car operation. They're already a 2-car operation, and they're looking to add a third in a very, very cool little project that we're going to tell you about. Another team has their eyes on expansion, but they're going to be a little bit more deliberate about it. We'll tell you about them. And Live Fast Motorsports, another one of those new teams that just recently came in within the last couple of years. They've been overshadowed, but maybe with a little bit of added sponsorship, they might be able to start making some moves. We'll talk about all those. Plus, we got to get to all the other series that we do cover and have news on for this week. Hour 1's in the books. Hour 2 coming up right here on CRN.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back.
Lexington.
Fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, we are back indeed. Hour number 2 underway. Matt Nicholson is the man, not in studio, but he is with us. He's live via phone in Charlotte, North Carolina, getting ready to take in live tomorrow night's Coca-Cola 600. Producer John and I have been left behind. Apparently, we weren't important enough to come along with him. At least that's the way John takes it.
Yep, that's exactly the way I take it. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that.
Easy.
On a much nicer note than where we left off hour number 1, Trackhouse Racing. They've announced a new internal program. They've codenamed it. It's Project 91. I don't know about the project side, but 91 will be the car number. That was pretty obvious. It's going to put out a third car for some select Cup Series races, especially set aside for international drivers. Okay. This year they plan to have one race, maybe more, but they know of one, and that in coming years they may want to expand it out. Justin Marks, who's co-owner of the team, said this, quote, Project 91's mission is to activate the intersection point of NASCAR racing and global motorsport culture. I truly believe that the next-gen car represents an opportunity for NASCAR to enter the global professional motorsport conversation. We now have a race vehicle with international technology relevance where world-class drivers from other disciplines can compete at NASCAR's highest level without the steep learning curve that previous generation cars required. Continued on by saying this, quote, vehicle advancements used in other forms of motorsports such as diffusers, independent rear suspension, sequential gearbox, and other more common components have resulted in a platform much less reliant on intimate proprietary stock car knowledge, which has historically made any transition to NASCAR difficult. With the formation of Project 91, Trackhouse has opened the door for global champions while beginning the process of scaling into an internationally recognized racing brand. So in other words, he really would like to see NASCAR expand to more than just maybe an occasional lower level race running in Canada or Mexico. He's actually talking about, and also probably talking about doing more than just exhibition races, which we've been known to do. NASCAR, we talked about it when they did the throwback weekend and how, well, let's stick with Trackhouse Racing. They came up with throwbacks that were just spot on to that exhibition race that was held in Japan with Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr. running the Coca-Cola schemes. And again, Trackhouse Racing nailed it. It looks like Justin Marks would like to see more than just exhibition stuff going on overseas.
You would definitely think that for sure with how he's taking some of this stuff, and he's not running with it. He is actually racing on foot with it because I've said it before on this show. He's arguably, the way he calculates his move and the way he moves and the way he handles his business ventures, he's easily the most dangerous car owner, and I mean that in a good way, the most dangerous car owner in the Cup Series.
I can agree with that.
Because I'm just going to say it this way. This is basically a revamped version of Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yeah.
Chip Ganassi Racing really was hit and miss for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
When the fiasco with Kyle Larson happened a few years ago, they really honestly fell off a little worse, if you ask me.
Oh yeah.
Larson was hit and miss. Kurt Busch wasn't all hit, but he wasn't all miss. He was kind of right there in the middle.
Yep.
So when Justin Marks takes the assets over, look who wakes up. Look who is
no doubt.
Look who is, I call it stupidly consistent. One, the other, or both cars are consistently, I'm going to say consistently inside the top 15 every single week.
Oh, absolutely.
If not top 10.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Barring bad luck. So he's taken that, he's revamped it, it came alive, and I told you this the other day when this program announced, and when they announced who their driver was.
Right, which we'll get to in a second.
This now is in my eyes is an immediate threat to contend for the race when this car unveils.
And again, we've talked about this in the trade-offs, and there have been a whole lot of Formula One NASCAR driver swaps just for, nothing obviously official. It's just, hey, let's see what your car does with you, my car does with you in it, and what your car does with me in it. Jeff Gordon, Juan Pablo Montoya, very notable one, the first one that happened. Tony Stewart, Lewis Hamilton, we've talked about that. This time around, though, we're going to actually see the first driver and the first race for the new number 91 Chevrolet. It's going to be ex-Formula One driver and champion Kimi Räikkönen, the Finnish driver, known as the Iceman. He's the winner of the 2007 F1 title. He holds the record for the most Formula One races started at 349. And again, this is just the first of what Justin Marks is hoping is going to be many world-renowned stars getting a chance to drive in the Cup Series. For Räikkönen, he's going to get his chance to race that number 91 at Watkins Glen International August 21st. And again, NASCAR's got their own licensing situation. F1's got their super license deal. NASCAR's got their own licensing thing. The fact that this isn't happening at a Daytona or a Talladega is probably to the benefit of Kimi Räikkönen, because NASCAR probably would raise the bar, even though he's as accomplished a Formula One driver as he is. Talladega and Daytona are different animals than literally any other racetrack on the planet. So they might have pumped the brakes if Justin Marks said, hey, I'm going to put Kimi Räikkönen in the car at the season finale, regular season finale at Daytona. But this is Watkins Glen. I find it hard to believe that NASCAR isn't going to look at Kimi Räikkönen and his bona fides, if you will, and go, oh, by the way, here's your NASCAR license. Thank you for coming.
Just like a couple months ago when we was talking about the team stage that's going to run later on in the year, and the ex-F1 driver, I can't remember who it was to save my life, he's going to make a start at Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
Where is he going to get his approval to run a super speedway at? Just because you ran an F1 car doesn't make you qualified to run at a super speedway, in which we know the absolute animal that Daytona and Talladega can be combined.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what racing series you're talking about. It doesn't matter whether it's IndyCar, Formula One. It could be the IMSA WeatherTech sports car series. It could be the World Endurance Challenge, World Rally Car, whatever. Daytona and Talladega, the way that NASCAR rules have it set, and now Atlanta, those three tracks are different forms of racing than literally any other form of racing that's out there. But we know that Kimi Räikkönen has run road courses, because road and street courses are all that F1 runs on. So even if Kimi Räikkönen didn't have prior NASCAR experience, which he does, and I'll detail that in a second, but even if Kimi Räikkönen didn't have prior NASCAR experience, knowing that he's running at Watkins Glen International, I don't have a problem giving him a license without having to worry about some sort of primer race to make sure that you can handle it.
Oh, same here. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I mean, touching back on it, look at the process that Juan Montoya had to go through in 2006 just to be able to run in Daytona starting in 2007.
Right.
He started, which was probably still to this day outside of, I think it's going to, I'm going to use it in comparison to outside of when Danica Patrick made her first stock car start at Daytona in the ARCA series, ARCA Menard series.
Mm-hmm.
Those probably there, and Juan Montoya's start at Talladega in 2006 in the fall, when ARCA used to run in the fall. Remember that, kid?
Yeah.
Those are probably the two highest watch ARCA series races, I would say, in the last 20 years.
I could agree with that.
But he went through the process, he took the steps, and he actually took a knack to Talladega. And we're thinking, oh, there's an F1 world champion, Indy 500 winner that's running ARCA at Talladega.
Yep.
He did the steps.
As mentioned.
Everybody else needs to do the steps as well.
Yep. As hinted, though, this will not be actually Räikkönen's first NASCAR experience. Now, back in 2011, he ran an Xfinity Series race and a Camping World Truck Series race, both at Charlotte Motor Speedway. But again, that was 11 years ago. And Watkins Glen is a little bit different animal, but I'd be shocked, truth be told, if Kimi Räikkönen hasn't had some experience at Watkins Glen in some way, shape, or form. And again, I don't have any problem with this. I think it's a very, very cool thing. Another team with an eye on expansion is 2311 Racing, not 23 by 1. In 2 seasons, 2311 went from an idea to a 2-car operation. However, while they do want to grow more, any immediate plans to buy another charter, which is proving to be a much more expensive venture than it used to be, or even develop a bigger shop to house 3 or even 4 cars, they're all on hold because they, like other teams within the Cup Series, are beginning to look at this situation. They're having to wait on a new media rights deal for television. This is set for 2025. And you think, wait a minute, what? Okay. Let's deal with the basis of this first. Co-owner Denny Hamlin of 2311 Racing told Adam Stern in the Sports Business Journal, quote, "I will go on record saying that I have had a meeting with Jim France and my message was clear that we need to stop talking about cutting. Cutting doesn't equal growth. We start working collectively, we can grow the sport together, but the business model will have to change for that. We at 2311 have big plans, but those plans are on hold until we see the change." That change that he's talking about, and we'll get more into detail on this, is the fact that the media rights deal for NASCAR, the current one, with Fox at the beginning half of the year and NBC at the end of the year for both Cup and Xfinity. Remember, the Camping World Truck Series is televised all year by Fox Sports 1. That comes to an end at the end of the 2024 season, which means that negotiations are about to begin. And NASCAR, just like Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, they do take a portion of the television rights deal and they split it amongst the teams. It's certainly not as big of a piece of pie as you would get in, say, the NFL, but it's still a pretty big chunk of money, and it certainly helps out all the teams. So, again, we'll deal with that in a little bit, but keep in mind, 2311 Racing, they're happy with 2 cars, but they want more.
Yeah, I mean, and somebody said this the other day on social media, and I can see the point. If they would start listening clearly instead of listening to, listening more to the Roger Penske's and the Rick Hendricks and the Jack Roush's, the older era of owners that are slowly working their way out, and you've got these new era of owners coming in, Denny Hamlin, Justin Marks. And we'll even throw Dale Earnhardt Jr. into the mix right here because we know he's explicitly said we're interested in going to Cup, but the business model and the price of the way these charters are is ludicrous.
Yeah.
So,
for them, it's got to make financial sense to do it.
Right. And if they would just take what they're saying and like, hey, let's throw some ideas out there and let's pull them together and find a way to grow, and instead of waiting to cut, like Denny Hamlin said, who knows where this could go?
Yep, exactly. And
because they're
we just talked about the situation with Justin Marks. Justin Marks feels like this thing could grow huge and on an international scale, and I think Denny Hamlin kind of sees the same thing, even if he's going about it in a different way. So I think both of them realize this, and I would agree. Cutting does not equal growth. To a certain extent, maybe you have to kind of contract a little bit to be able to expand, but it seems like we've been concentrating so much on cutting things and making sure that prices are under control that we've kind of forgotten the bigger goal. And in some ways, I think that is hurting NASCAR.
Right. I could not agree more.
Over at sister company Joe Gibbs Racing, the team owner talked to the Charlotte Observer newspaper this week about the future of his operation. Got to talking about Kyle Busch. He said this, quote, "We're really confident that we're going to have that number 18 car squared away sponsorship-wise, and we're trying to work out our deal right now with Kyle. So I think we feel good about it." Kyle, last we heard, seemed not so confident. We'll find out. Live Fast Motorsports signing a new sponsor. It is Blaster Holdings LLC, the maker of well-known products such as PB Blaster, along with other cleaners, solvents, rust removers, degreasers, protectants. They've been doing that since the 1950s. It's a partnership that runs through the 2022 season for driver B.J. McLeod. They'll be on the hood for the Cup Series debut race at Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway. And later on this year, they'll also be on the hood for McLeod on the 78 at Atlanta, Michigan, Richmond, and Darlington. And I think they're going to be an associate sponsor for the remainder of the year. And one other Cup note, congratulations going out to Spire Motorsports driver Corey LaJoy and his wife, Kelly. They welcomed their son, Jensen Daniel LaJoy, officially Thursday evening. Joins their 2-year-old son, Levi, in the family. Levi, again, now 2 years old. Congratulations to them. In the conversation that we mentioned just a moment ago between Joe Gibbs and the Charlotte Observer newspaper, Joe also got to talking about his grandson, Ty Gibbs, otherwise known as the latest bull in a china shop in NASCAR. Gibbs, the older one, says he wants to be patient with his grandson. He said, quote, "We want to be real careful, take our time, and so really our goal is to keep him in Xfinity for 2 years. This is his first year, really." So I think he's had 23 or 24 Xfinity races. So the game plan is 2 years for sure in Xfinity. Make sure we don't rush him. Now, that means probably he's looking for 2 full-time seasons, which means this year and next year. Kind of like the old bull in a china shop, I'm looking to see out of Haley Deegan, and I'm starting to see those rough edges be kind of smoothed down a little bit. I'm waiting for those rough edges on Ty Gibbs to be smoothed down. That's number one. But number two, where the heck is he going to go? Because if they re-sign Kyle Busch, and that right now is still up in the air, that means what? Denny Hamlin's on a year-to-year basis?
It's got to be. I mean, because I don't, unless he goes to the 19 car.
Martin Truex Jr. doesn't seem. Martin Truex Jr. to me doesn't seem anywhere near set to retire.
True, but I mean, you never know the way his mindset could go one day. He's happy-go-lucky, jumping around. Man, I'm loving this, and the next day, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, maybe true too. I guess we'll see.
We'll see. But there's three outs there. It's just, is it out 1, out 2, or out 3? Because who knows? Denny Hamlin could, at the end of his contract with Gibbs, could say, "Hey, I'm gonna go drive a car for my organization and retire with my organization."
Yeah, he could.
Who knows?
Yeah, he could.
He very well could.
One more note on
one of those, time will tell.
Yep. One more note on Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series as well. They've turned to a Trans Am driver by the name of Connor Mosak. He's going to pilot the number 18 Toyota Supra in Xfinity competition for the team when the series makes its debut at Portland International Raceway next weekend out in Oregon. Mosak's 23. He runs for Team SLR in Trans Am 2 division. This will mark his first foray into the Xfinity Series. He's relatively inexperienced when it comes to stock cars, but he has a little bit. The thing about it is he's relatively inexperienced overall. He didn't actually get into racing seriously until he was 18, but he racked up 5 titles pretty quick in Legends cars. He began running late models in 2019. He's run some select ARCA Series races in 2021 before he went full-time Trans Am last year as well. So this year he's going to get at least one opportunity on a road course and good equipment. We'll have to see how the 23-year-old does there. When we come back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he's the co-driver of the ARCA car with Brett.
Okay.
This year.
When we come back, we're going to talk about today's Xfinity Series race in Charlotte and Fox Sports doing this weekend their annual Drivers Only broadcast. We'll give you the lineup. We'll talk about the Camping World Truck Series a little bit and work our way over into IndyCar, NHRA, and Formula One all in the next 40 minutes. Heck yeah, why not? That's why we're CRN. Stay tuned.
Stay right here for more Championship Racing Network.
Concrete basement wall.
4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Some things are obvious to you when it comes to dealing with repairs. Well, for a car, for example. A flat tire is obvious. A small leak of oil, maybe not quite so obvious to you until you really start looking into things. Same thing with your house. Some things are very, very obvious. If the gutter's falling off of the roof, you realize, hey, I got to get the gutter fixed. On the other hand, if you're not really paying attention, a small crack along the bricks, maybe towards the ground area right around where the foundation of your house is, might not be so apparent. This is why you need to, unless you happen to be one of the few people listening to us right now that is a home foundation expert, then you need to call our home foundation expert. Talking about Michael Hart with Ox Foundation Solutions. Don't take chances with that home. Don't take chances with what may be the most expensive investment you'll ever make in your life, your house. He'll come out, he'll give you, again, no cost, no obligation, a written foundation assessment of your home. 205-362-6419. That's 205-362-6419. Michael can go anywhere in the state of Alabama. Doesn't matter, north to south, east to west, wherever you are. Give him a call or send him an email, Mike at Ox Foundation Solutions. Set up the appointment, have him come out. Again, no cost to you, no obligation to you, and in writing, you know whether there's anything wrong with the house. And if there's nothing, he's going to write it down and tell you there's nothing wrong with the house, shake hands, wave, whatever it is that you prefer, and you'll go your separate ways. But if there is something wrong with the house, he'll sit down with you, he'll explain it to you, and explain the charges to you, and then when you're done, you look at the total and go, oh, by the way, I heard about this on the Championship Racing Network. Promo code's WEST. He takes 15% off of the total that he just quoted you. Not bad, huh? Go ahead and set it up, 205-362-6419, or by email, Mike at oxfoundations.com. Today, Fox Sports doing their annual drivers-only broadcast. It's this year at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Has been the case for the past couple of years. Kevin Harvick is the lead man in the broadcast booth, with Joey Logano and his Team Penske teammate Ryan Blaney up in the booth joining Harvick this year for the call. Logano's been a fairly regular one up there. Blaney is starting to make himself something of a regular in that role. Then you get down trackside. Tyler Reddick joins Austin Cindric. Ooh, they're going to be your pit reporters, Austin Cindric. He's the rookie in the Cup Series. This ought to be interesting. Brad Keselowski, Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will take over the Fox Sports studio roles. So that's going to be what it's going to look and sound like later on today. Kevin Harvick does a really good job. Joey Logano, I think those two probably are setting themselves up for whenever they get done. Kevin Harvick probably before Logano, obviously, for broadcasting roles in their next career after they're done driving.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Then you got a guy by the name of Shigeki Hattori. He is known around the Camping World Truck Series garage as Shiggy. He's enjoying his time as a winning organization in the Truck Series. He's looking for more at the same time. He got to recounting his past, said he got interested in motorsports at the age of 8 or 9, got fascinated with his uncle's motorcycle, said he tried to start it, but he just found out that 2 wheels wasn't enough. He actually began as a driver, but when he got done with that, he started getting into ownership. And that happened in 2008 when he began Hattori Racing Enterprises. He began an ARCA competition. Justin Marks, there's that guy again, as his driver. After coming close to titles in 2012, 2013, he said, you know what, let's go Truck Series racing. It was only part-time up until 2017 when he went full-time, found his driver in Brett Moffitt. They won the series title 2018. Since, he has also begun entering Xfinity Series competition on a part-time basis. He's got 2 full-time trucks, the part-time Xfinity entry, but he wants more. Hattori recently got to talking to people and said, quote, my goal is I really want to move to Cup. The keys to the sport are people and sponsorship. If everything is right, I really want to move to Cup. I don't just like running. I really want to win the race. So hopefully the people, the sponsors that I can put together in the future, I can move up to Cup. Said he's got no timeline for that at this moment, but he does have a couple of pretty good drivers in his stable. We've talked about Chase Purdy. We've talked about Tyler Ankrum. He's working to get them more experience. If he can keep either one or both of those drivers, to me, he's got the solid foundation. It's just a matter of finding the sponsorship that he's going to need to be able to go out and buy a charter, which, as we've mentioned, not an inexpensive venture. And then he could go Cup Series racing, and I'm not going to say he'd be a threat right off the bat, but the way that he has run his operation so far, I certainly wouldn't discount him as getting an occasional win over the first couple of years until he really found himself on a solid foundation.
I mean, it's not out of the question because, Shiggy Hattori, he like you said, he started in ARCA and worked his way up. And then all it took was that one spark with Brett Moffitt coming in and winning the title that year. And the next thing you know, boom, he's an instant fixture and he's an instant threat every single week.
Right.
All because of how he built his people around him. And with Scott Zippadelli, his crew chief, which we've heard that name before, Zippadelli. We know where that pedigree comes from.
Oh, yeah.
So he's got solid people to get it done. It's just a matter of doing that proper and right alignment to where he doesn't set himself up for failure. He sets himself up for success.
And he's pretty well embedded with Toyota. And we say this, this is an interesting bit because so far he has formed up over the course of his time, going back to when he was a driver in the late 1980s. He's formed a relationship with several Toyota dealers in Japan, 3 of which still support him to this day. Now, obviously, it's not like, going down to your local Toyota dealership here in Alabama or even in Charlotte and saying, hey, I'm going to go buy one. You're not going to buy one from a Japanese dealer and have it transported over here. That's just ridiculously expensive. But it is a sponsorship beginning for him, and that's a huge thing. And speaking of sponsorship, I don't know whether this would have any impact up at the Cup Series level, but it certainly could, because speaking of Tyler Ankrum and the number 16 truck, last night, if you were watching the race, you might have noted the names of some 2,400 active duty military and veterans who may not necessarily be serving, but they are members of an organization, specifically Liuna, which is a major sponsor of Hattori Racing Enterprises and that number 16. All those names were on the bed cover during last night. For those of you that don't know, by the way, Liuna, Liuna, is short for Laborers International Union of North America, and they have a lot of military people, whether they're currently serving or they are ex-military, and they've gone now back into the public sector or the private sector, as the case may be. So, yeah, congratulations to them on doing that. It's really cool. But if they can get some more sponsorship, that'll be the key. Carson Hocevar, Nice Motorsports, getting a sponsorship boost as well. Worldwide Express expanding out their deal with the team. They're going to cover 8 more races this year. With 3 top 5s over the past 4 weeks, Hocevar added the company as an associate sponsor just for last night. They're going to debut as a primary sponsor for the Clean Harbors 150 at Knoxville Raceway. It's not going to be a clean truck after that dirt track race is done, but hey, that's Worldwide Express's deal. After that, they're going to be a primary sponsor on Hocevar's truck at Nashville, Pocono, Indianapolis Raceway Park, Richmond, Bristol, Homestead, and in the season finale in Phoenix. And for the rest of the races, they will be an associate sponsor. So congratulations to Carson and to Nice Motorsports. I know that'll help them out. Then we talked about the current TV deals. Again, they run through the 2024 season, but it seems highly unlikely that NASCAR is going to wait too long before setting up what happens in 2025 and beyond for TV partners. They basically want it to be either continuation of what we are seeing now or a smooth transition into whatever it's going to take place in the future. And on that note, Adam Stern of Sports Business Daily reported this week that there are plans for NASCAR to give preliminary conversations with ESPN and their partner ABC. In a statement from ESPN, Stern noted this, quote, "We're really happy with F1 being our flagship right now, flagship motorsports property. Obviously, we know that NASCAR in particular is a conversation that will likely happen in some shape or form going forward, just because when any major sports property comes to market, we don't dismiss anything out of hand. So we're interested in exploring whatever that looks like, but right now we're pretty satisfied with F1, and assuming a renewal, it would continue to be our flagship. I don't see them having a problem with renewing with Sky Sports and Sky Sports continuing with Formula One. So that's kind of that path for ESPN and ABC when it comes to Formula One. But unlike what NBC is going to be dealing with as we get into the second half of the year, because remember, NBC no longer has the NBC Sports Network, number one. Number two, NBC has the Indycar deal, and they're only going to put 3 of this year's 17 planned races not on NBC. 2 of them will be on USA, and one of them earlier on that's already run, I think. No, I take that back. It's is it Texas next week or is it Detroit? It's one of the two that's coming up that's going to be on the Peacock streaming service only. Toronto. Thank you very much. I appreciate the correction. So you got that race that's coming up that's going to be on Peacock only, and then 2 races that are going to be on USA, the cable network, and then all the rest of them are on NBC. And now all of a sudden they're going to get NASCAR, and we know that NASCAR and IndyCar do tend to schedule races on the same day at somewhere around the same time, to where if they don't start at the same time, they're going to overlap. So that means that a whole lot of races on NBC are suddenly going to, or that NASCAR is going to have, are suddenly going to find themselves on USA. And while USA's got a pretty big reach, is NASCAR really happy with that?
I don't know. Well, we're going to find out for sure this year.
Yeah, we are, no doubt, because this is going to come to a head very, very quick. One unfortunately sad note from the NHRA, the man known from the 1970s into the early 1990s as the voice of the NHRA, has passed away. Dave McClelland was known to fans of the sport as the man who called the action at the track and on television. It ultimately landed him after some 6 decades in broadcasting in the NHRA Hall of Fame. No less than John Force said of McClelland, quote, "He helped build the stars of our sport. He helped build so many careers. He helped me build me into what I am today, took me to another level. I knew every racer. We all loved him. He always spoke the truth, treated everyone with respect. He was great at what he did and was overall a good man. He'll be missed. My family and those who knew him best are in our thoughts and prayers." Tony Pedregon said, quote, "If there was a Howard Cosell of drag racing, that would be a Dave McClelland." Say what you will about Howard Cosell, but let's face it. If we think about Monday Night Football on ABC, what's the first name that come to mind? Folks, it's Howard Cosell. Ron Capps said, quote, "It wasn't just the golden voice. Dave had a presence about him that made you feel like you were special when he spoke." Passed away on May 22nd, leaving his wife of 64 years, Louise. Sad to hear about that. Sons Kevin and Mike, daughter Melissa, 6 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. Cause of death was not released. Dave McClelland was 85 years old. We will assume natural causes until we hear otherwise. Either way, rest in peace, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his friends and family. Real quick, you noted that Q1 in Formula One is done. Who's not advancing into Q2?
Yes, it is done. Not advancing into Q2 from 20 to 16 is Joe Guanyu, Nicholas Latifi, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Alexander Albon.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on that.
Just a side note, Lewis Hamilton nearly missed Q2. He got in by 0.13 seconds.
Ouch. On the other hand, Scott Dixon, as we noted during the race recap, claimed the pole for tomorrow's Indy 500. 5th pole in his time in running an IndyCar for the Indy 500. But in the process, as we were noting last week, speed records continue to be broken. Speed records have been falling ever since IndyCar officials allowed Chevrolet and Honda to boost their turbos and added about 90 horses overall. Dixon turned in a 4-lap average of 234.06 miles per hour, bested the old pole record, 233.718 miles per hour. That's a record that has stood since 1996 when Scott Brayton did it. Now, there actually was a faster qualifying time than Dixon's, set by Ari Luyendyk. That also happened back in 1996, but since his run came in the second day of qualifications, effectively bump day, it didn't count towards the pole. So Luyendyk's averaging qualifying overall for 4 laps still stands 236.986, but if IndyCar does what they've been talking about, which is with the new engine set to come in the next couple of years, go up to about 1,000 horsepower, 236.986 may fall too.
236.98 may get shattered.
Yeah, we may start seeing 240s, truth be told. That'll be interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised.
As for the honorary starter of tomorrow's race, they've turned to an acclaimed actor by the name of Miles Teller. Teller's latest role is that of Bradley Bradshaw, call sign Rooster. That's right, he's in the sequel to Top Gun Maverick. It actually hit theaters officially yesterday. Yeah, like that blockbuster's going to need any more press, but either way. Miles Teller's character is actually the son of Anthony Edwards' character Goose from the 1996 original film. You might have seen Miles Teller in The Offer. It's on Paramount Plus if you got that streaming service. That's about the making of the Godfather series of films. He was also in the 2015 edition of Fantastic Four when he played Reed Richards. Not many people saw it. It was a flop. He was also Willard in the remake of Footloose from 2011. One of IndyCar's pending free agents insists He's off the market now, but he's not giving details, at least not yet. Alexander Rossi, who runs this year for Andretti Autosport and has ever since he joined IndyCar, told Motorsport.com he has signed a deal for next year and beyond, but he's waiting on an official announcement. It should come within the next month. He said that, though, because of legal reasons, nothing can be said at this time. Something in a contract that would keep you from announcing it until a specific point in the season?
Yep. That's not the first I've ever heard of that.
Okay.
I've seen that before.
When Rossi was pressed a little bit about what his goals are, Rossi said it was to win a championship. Well, that's obvious. All drivers want to do that. When asked about how many teams he felt were capable of winning a title, he noted 3. And then kind of gave Andretti Autosport a bit of a slap in the face when he said that they haven't been championship caliber in a long time. Ouch. He noted Team Penske. He noted Chip Ganassi Racing as being dominant over the past decade. He also talked about Aero McLaren Racing SP. The thing about Aero McLaren Racing SP, it would involve a switch from Honda to Chevrolet, and that's somewhat interesting because Honda actually paid a kicker to Andretti to keep him in a Honda when Rossi signed his current deal back in 2019. So we'll have to see how all of this comes together. I agree with him in the fact that really Andretti Autosport has not been championship caliber in a long time, but it is interesting for him to say that when he's talking about how he's got a new deal signed, and it could technically be back with Andretti. We've been wondering when Andretti was going to wake back up, and I kind of have thought in my mind that Alexander Rossi would be a part of that. Turns out maybe he won't.
Right. Well, according to some of the things that I've seen through the IndyCar channels of social media, not just specifically the IndyCar Series channel, but through other people, is the deal that he signed is with McLaren. They're going to a third car next year.
Yeah, and that's what we're hearing too. So it'll be interesting to see how all that works. John, do we have to have a take? We have to take a break, correct? Are we missing a break?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, I say we go ahead and take it now. When we come back, Team Penske has signed an extension with a longtime sponsor that will have ramifications beyond just what we see on certain cars. Again, it's Penske. Think about it for a second. Think about it while we take this break. You're listening to CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
station.
2 tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in here as we get ready to wrap up the show, but we got quite a bit of news to get to first. Start off with Team Penske signing a long-time sponsor, Shell, to a 5-year extension of that partnership deal. It dates back quite a ways. We'll give you some of the history on it here in a moment. But Team Penske and Shell Pennzoil have combined for 96 race wins as partners. Most recently, Joey Logano's win at Darlington in the Cup Series. This new deal covers Penske's Nascar, Indycar, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and much of the rest of the Penske Entertainment holdings. It keeps them on the car of Logano in NASCAR and also keeps them on the cars of Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin in IndyCar. So this is going to be a far-reaching deal that is also going to turn into making Shell the official fuel of IndyCar, supplanting this year's sponsor, Speedway, in that role next year. And that fuel, according to Shell, Matt's going to be a renewable fuel, low-carbon one. This new fuel they refer to as a second-generation ethanol made from sugarcane and other biofuels, gasoline composed of feedstocks, which are categorized as renewable under federal regulations, so exactly how much of the percentage, we don't know. It's said to lower greenhouse gases by as much as 60% from the current fuel that is used in the series. So again, as we were talking about it, this particular sponsorship is not just, hey, it's going to be on a couple of cars. It's got wide-ranging aspects to it.
Yeah, now I think it's just a matter of time before you see something like this filter down into the stock car series like NASCAR.
I think it almost has to, because how many times are we going to be willing to switch signage from Shell to Sunoco?
True. Very, very true, because you've got a lot of Sunoco signs to replace, for sure, if that happens.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch that particular situation. While that deal was being announced, Pato O'Ward was coming to terms on a contract extension of his own. He has announced officially yesterday morning that he has signed an extension with Arrow McLaren SP through at least 2025. Gives him a pretty good pay raise. That was not detailed, by the way. Also, not a bad little kicker to have in your contract. They're going to give him a McLaren road car for driving around purposes. That's just a darn shame. Ooh. And don't forget, we've talked about this within the past few weeks. Pato O'Ward has talked about the fact that he really would like to get a chance at maybe going F1 racing. This contract leaves the potential open for some F1 possibilities, according to the Associated Press, who got a look at said contract. O'Ward's running his 3rd year for Arrow McLaren SP. In that time, he's proven a legitimate championship contender. Won 2 races. 2021 was 3rd in the season's final standings. This year, after kind of a slow start, the past 3 races, he has got top 10s in each and a win at Barber Motorsports Park. And oh, by the way, in his 2 prior Indy 500 starts, he's got 2 top 10s. So, yeah, I'd say he's a legitimate championship contender, and congratulations to Arrow McLaren SP for locking him up. And then there's John. Then there's John's favorite IndyCar driver.
Really?
Yes.
Are we going to talk about Johnson?
We're going to talk about Jimmy. Last time we saw a driver pull the double off was back in 2014. Kurt Busch running both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Now, several drivers, including Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, have been rumored to be at least considering it. Now we can add Jimmy Johnson's name to that list. Johnson still hasn't ruled out returning to the Cup Series, even if only in a one-off situation. And then, of course, as we lead up into today and this weekend's events, he was asked about the possibility of doing both Memorial Day weekend races. Johnson said, quote, "I've always thought that the guys doing the double just did something special and unique, and I wanted to do that. I'm open to it. I don't know if it would ever come together, but I'm certainly open to it. If he was able to do it, he would join a fairly elite club." We mentioned Kurt Busch. The only other 3 drivers that have been able to do it, Robbie Gordon, John Andretti, and arguably the most successful one because he finished on the lead lap in both races on the same day, that would be Tony Stewart. That's it. So Jimmy Johnson would join that club if he were able to figure out a way to make it happen.
He can figure it out.
Yep.
I think Rick Hendrick would be more than happy to figure out a way to make that happen.
Well, if anybody can, Johnson can do it.
Sure. I mean, the deal itself is not the problem. Oh, yeah. It's just making sure that he's in shape. And we've talked about him. He's an avid cyclist. He's run marathons. It's not like Jimmy Johnson's out of shape. I am. He's not.
Yeah.
So we'll find out.
If it's not Hendrick, I could see a collaboration effort between Hendrick and Trackhouse to put Johnson in that third car.
Yeah, I could see that too. Despite having the biggest month and the biggest weekend this weekend, IndyCar officials are also still trying to work the series and make the series better and better, and they're hoping to introduce an even lighter aero screen as soon as 2024, they say. The 2020 version, currently being used with some modifications, initially was designed by Red Bull Advanced Technologies and in collaboration with the IndyCar chassis builder Dallara. It first weighed more than 52 pounds. And 52 pounds, when you're talking about ounces making a difference, certainly made a difference in the balance of the car. Well, in the couple of years since, with new manufacturing processes, they've been able to drop it down to initially 27 pounds, and that's what it weighs now. But IndyCar says that they want something more in the 13 to 14 pound range, while at the same time it's still able to withstand the 30,000 pound impact that the current system can handle. Yeah, no problem there. We'll just whip that up. It'll be all right. Anyway,
yeah,
they want to keep the safety factor intact while hoping to increase the speed factor of the cars, something that we've seen, obviously, at Indianapolis. Another thing they're working on of concern to the drivers, noting this after the GMR Indy Grand Prix, is that the drivers were having a hard time seeing through the aero screen in rainy conditions. They state they have no answer at this time, but they're looking at several options, things like adding more tear-offs, or, I don't know, they could do something that John knows. How about applying Rain-X?
I was going to say Rain-X. You read my mind.
So did they. So we'll find out what it is that they actually wrap up with. How's Q2 going over there, Mr. Matt?
Q2 has ended, going from 15 to 11. Your drivers out in Q2 is Mick Schumacher, Daniel Ricciardo, Kevin Magnussen, Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda.
So after both House F1s had made Q2 last race, they both miss it this time.
Yeah, they didn't miss it by much. The field is very, very tight right here.
Okay. The somewhat controversial jewelry ban that Lewis Hamilton, among others, protested so loudly against and then kind of somewhat complied to has gotten another exemption. Was officially extended on Thursday of this week. The F1 rulebook bans any form of jewelry from being worn by the drivers during races, but until this year, it had been an unenforced rule. But as we got new race directors this year, one of those two new race directors, Neil Wittich, wanted to change that. He wanted to ban it all. He wanted to follow the rule book to the letter. Neck chains, bracelets, any piercings would be verboten under those rules. For those of you that don't speak foreign languages, that means you can't have it.
German.
Yeah. Hamilton has 3, by the way. He's got 1 piercing in either ear, and he's got 1 in the nose, which I still can't get over piercings in the nose. I don't care who's got it. Hamilton is the leader of the pushback, but far from the only driver railing against it. And because of numerous drivers saying that, an exemption was initially granted to go to this week leading up to the Monaco race, but now, again, the exemption has been continued now through the end of June. It'll probably be continued even past that. McLaren debuted their 2022 racer, but we talked about this when this paint scheme came out. Sharp-eyed fans noticed immediately something was missing that had been on all McLaren cars since 1995. We're talking about the Ayrton Senna logo. The logo was removed for this year's racer because the team said that they wanted to look towards the future, not the past, even if it happened to be one of the best racers in F1 history. Senna, one of their most famed drivers. All of his 3 titles came driving for McLaren between 1988 and 1993. But in 1994, he moved over to Williams, and it was in a Williams that he crashed at the San Marino Grand Prix that year, 1994, and unfortunately died. Well, beginning immediately, in other words, beginning this weekend, according to the CEO of McLaren, Zach Brown, that name and logo returns, and it will be part of the look of every McLaren racer in perpetuity. In other words, he heard the people complaining, and they fixed it. So it's going to be on every single car from now on, they say. And that's the right move.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
On a little bit of a lighter note here, Disney Pixar, not unfamiliar to grabbing people that just do cameo voices. And the Disney Pixar film Lightyear comes out. Got 2 Formula One drivers going to be lending their voices to the animated film, but not here in the U.S. This is the backstory, the origin story, if you will, about the Toy Story character Buzz Lightyear. initially voiced by Tim Allen of Home Improvement and Last Man Standing fame. For whatever reason, Disney Pixar went away from Tim Allen and picked Chris Evans, best known for his time as Captain America. I don't know why they made that switch. But either way, Ferrari's F1 drivers, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, were asked to provide their voices. They take over the role of the lead character for the overseas foreign language dubbed versions. Leclerc does the Italian version, while Sainz does the Spanish language versions. This, by the way, is the second time that Pixar has gone to Formula One to seek some voices. Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel were Formula One drivers who voiced characters in Cars 3. Lightyear comes out July 17th here in the United States, but in Italy they get it 2 days earlier. Well, la-di-da for liking pasta that much more. On a much heavier note, Red Bull and likely some others, according to their team principal Christian Horner, having a hard time adjusting to the new budget cap introduced for 2021 and tightened down a little bit for this year. While several teams, mostly the lower income scale teams, are actually against the idea of altering the cap, Horner's claiming that with the increased freight costs and the inflation levels around the world, without a budget cap adjustment, some teams may have to miss races in order to stay under it. Horner said, I think we need the FIA to address the inflationary issue because I think basically probably about 7 of the teams probably need to miss at least the last 4 races to come within the budget cap. One of the teams opposing it is Alpine. Another one is Alfa Romeo. No surprise there. A couple of the lower sides there. F1's managing director, Ross Braun, said that he and series officials are aware of the current economic climate around the world, acknowledged something may have to be done, but they don't know exactly what. Said that when these rules were developed, inflation was relatively low and predictable. Now it's high and unpredictable. I guess we'll find out over time whether they raise it, but I get the feeling that some teams are going to complain very loudly about it. Hey, if you didn't budget yourself earlier, you might just have to miss a race or two. And guess what? That's on you, kids. Sorry, but sometimes things just have to happen that way. We appreciate Matt from Charlotte. He unfortunately apparently lost connection. But we will talk about it next week when he joins us back live here in studio while John takes the week off. Fine, be that way. We'll find out how the Coca-Cola 600 was from his viewpoint. You, sir, enjoy your week off, or a couple of weeks off, actually, because we won't see you until what, mid-June?
Mid-June.
All right.
Something like that, yeah.
Enjoy your time off. Everybody who's listening to us or watching us on YouTube on CRN Live, enjoy the racing this weekend. We'll be back to talk about it again next weekend right here on the one, the only, the Championship Racing Network. See ya.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.